All right, let's just jump right in. You know that thing where your eyelid starts twitching and it just won't stop? Or you stand up and get that fleeting moment of dizziness, maybe a finger that suddenly feels like it has a mind of its own? These are these tiny little moments that we all just kind of brush off, right? But what if they aren't random at all? What if they're the very first signal of something deeper going on? See, our bodies are talking to us all the time, but a lot of the time it's in these whispers that we're just too busy to really hear. We blame it on stress or not getting enough sleep, and we just keep going. But those subtle signals, they're often the body's early warning system, trying to tell us that something's starting to shift long before it becomes a problem you can't ignore. So that's the big question we're going to dig into. We're going to look at this incredible concept from ancient medicine that sees these little fleeting sensations not as just annoyances, but as the first crucial chapter in the story of how we get sick. And honestly, it's an idea that could completely reframe how you think about your own health. Now think about it. Modern medicine often waits for really clear, measurable signs before it gives you a diagnosis. But a lot of ancient traditions, they did the exact opposite. They paid the most attention to these tiny, almost invisible disturbances. They believed that this was the most important moment to step in, the moment you could actually steer things back toward health. And they had a name for this state of subtle internal movement. They called it feng, which, yeah, that translates to wind. But no, they weren't talking about a breezy day. They were using it as a metaphor for an internal pattern of change, a process that, as you'll see, has a lot in common with the wind outside. So, what in the world is this internal wind? To really get it, you've got to stop thinking about it as a thing and start thinking about it as a process. It's all about a pattern of change. Okay, so at its heart, this wind has four key qualities. One, it's formless. You can't see it, you can't grab it. Two, it's always moving. Three, it's fast. It shows up out of nowhere. And four, it's always changing. It never stays in one spot or in one state for long. So again, it's not a substance, it's the pattern of change itself. And this is where the analogy just clicks. Think about natural wind, right? It's totally invisible. You only know it's there because you see the leaves rustling or feel it on your face. Well, bodily wind is the exact same idea. It's an invisible process that you only feel through its effects, like a sudden twitch, a pain that seems to wander from your knee to your ankle, or a rash that just pops up and then vanishes. What's really fascinating is that this wasn't just some isolated idea in ancient China. Cultures all over the world were observing the same thing. In ancient Greece, they talked about pneuma, this vital breath. Over in India, vata was the principle that governed all movement in the body. They all recognized that some kind of formless, moving energy was absolutely central to being alive, and also to the very beginning of sickness. So this whole idea of a vital, moving force wasn't just some philosophical concept. It was incredibly practical. They saw it as the key to understanding that journey from being perfectly healthy to being sick. And it turns out, this wind is the critical link in that chain. So they saw this clear progression. Everything starts with what's called qi. Just think of it as your body's baseline stable energy. When you're healthy, that energy has a nice, healthy, rhythmic movement. But when that movement gets chaotic, unstable, that's when you get the disturbance, or what we're calling wind. And if that disturbance doesn't get resolved, it can eventually settle in and become a fixed physical disease. So you see, wind is that crucial tipping point. This all leads to this very famous, very old quote: "Wind is the leader of 100 diseases." Now, that doesn't mean wind causes everything. What it really means is that this pattern of unstable movement is like the opening act. It's the first signal that the body's balance is off, and that creates an opening for other problems to come in and take root. Okay, I know this might still feel a little bit out there, so let's make it real. Let's look at some super concrete examples of how this wind pattern actually shows up in different parts of the body. In the nervous system, wind is about as dramatic as it gets. I'm talking about things like a stroke or Bell's palsy. What defines them? A sudden, incredibly rapid loss of control. 1 minute you're fine, the next, a part of your body just stops listening. That sudden, uncontrolled change is the pattern of wind in action. Now, when it comes to your joints, the pattern is a little different. It's often described as movement with obstruction. The wind part is that wandering pain. It's in your shoulder one day and your wrist the next. But it's often combined with a feeling of obstruction, like a stiffness, a heaviness, that makes it hard to move. So, check this out. When your joint pain is dominated by wind, Its main characteristic is that it moves around, it wanders. That's totally different from pain dominated by what they called cold, which is really fixed and sharp, or damp, which feels all heavy and swollen. The way the pain moves is the biggest clue. And what about on the skin? Well, here, wind shows up as a light, kind of floating disturbance. Think about an itch that you just can't pin down, it just moves all over. Or a rash, like hives, that flares up really fast and then just disappears. Comes and goes, it moves around and never stays put. Classic characteristics of wind, just playing out on the surface of your body. So if wind is that first sign, that first little disturbance, then the most important question is, what can we do about it? Can you actually catch it before it turns into something more serious? And the answer, thankfully, is yes. So, what is the one thing you need to take away from all of this? It's simple. The earliest warning sign of trouble is when a part of your body moves in a way that it shouldn't. That eyelid twitch, a muscle that trembles, that sudden dizzy spell, that unusual movement, that's the signal. And there's actually a simple 3-step method for what to do in that moment. So, the second you feel that weird movement, first thing, stop. Whatever you're doing, just pause. Second, rest. Lie down or at least sit quietly. Cut out all the extra stimulation. And finally, breathe. Just focus on some slow, deep, even breaths to help your whole system calm down and stabilize. It's all about calming that little storm before it gets bigger. At the end of the day, this ancient idea just gives us a really powerful new way to look at things. It's asking us to become better listeners to our own bodies. Because a problem might not start with a scream. It might just start with a whisper of wind. And the real question is, are we paying close enough attention to actually hear it?